It's making your scripts about them and not about you. Getting curious, asking the questions, getting to know them. So today we were talking about scripting and role play and why this is important. And I know there's a couple of you on this call that make phone calls every single day. How many of you guys actually practice your scripts or role play them with a partner?
Occasionally.
Occasionally?
Occasionally.
Okay. So I was listening to a podcast today, and I'll send you guys the link here in a minute, but they were talking about the importance of scripting, and there was some really good messages that hit home. One of the things that he said, this speaker was doing a presentation, and Ed Milet was there. And Ed said, "Man, you nailed that. That was the best presentation I have ever heard," which for those of you that listen to Ed Milet, for Ed to say that, it had to be pretty good because he's quite the speaker himself. And he said, the guy said, "Hey, you know what? It took me 900 speeches to perfect that. 900. And then Ed said, "Well, so you're going to change it now, right? Because after 900, you have to be bored." And he said, "Nope." He said, "The value is in the boring." And that hit home. That's a message I know that we hear on this call a lot, but the value is in the boring. So two things that I kind of pulled from that was it's all about the practicing and what you do behind the scenes than it is, the actual presentation itself, that it takes time and that you've got to stick through the boring to perfect your craft. So they gave a formula for perfecting your craft, and it's really volume over time. So it's how often are you practicing and for how long are you practicing? And this isn't going to be the same for everybody, right? It might take one person, several weeks of practicing, and it could take someone else years of practicing to perfect their craft. But, there was a saying that they said on there that Mark Twain said, and it takes 20 years to perfect an impromptu response. And I think that's true. I'm going to use Matt as an example because I always like to just use Matt as an example, but Matt is like the most well-polished, right? When we all are like, "Hey, throw out a script, just talk," right? He's like this. Matt, how long have you been scripting?
Like about 25, almost 30 years.
And have you always been quick at throwing out responses and felt like you knew exactly what to say and when to say it?
No, I share the story when I made a commitment to start lead generating. I would literally like throw up on myself and just be like I literally couldn't speak. I couldn't get it out.
Yeah.
And so that embarrassment and that feeling of unpreparedness pissed me off so much. And like, I got so mad at feeling like such a tool on the phone or in front of people. Like, let's be like full transparency. I was so upset, feeling so embarrassed and I also understood that my lack of preparation put me in that spot. Like when somebody asks you something, you ever get that like hotness, that sweat on your neck? You don't know exactly what to say. And all of a sudden you just start blabbering and you sound like a complete idiot. Well, every time you do that, it costs you $15,000 in our world. I was absolutely never going to let that happen again. So I just made a commitment that I'm never going to get caught unprepared. If there are certain responses or rebuttals to whatever I was going after, I was going to master at least 3 to 5 different angles of attacking every single one of them, because the words that come out of my mouth equal $15,000 in every scenario.
Yeah, I like that. The $15,000 conversations. You can write a book. The $15,000 conversation. There you go.
Next one. Yeah, next one.
No, but they talked about the like in Rocky, you're seeing him fight, and then it does the cut scene, and it shows him going through all the training and all of that, right? Like all of us have a cut scene. All of us have a cut scene. We just other people don't see that. And so the important thing is to really get started and be consistent in what you're doing. And practicing, So 7% of conversation, or how people receive conversation, is the actual words you're saying. 7%. The rest of it is things like tonality and inflection, speed, pausing, all of those things. And it takes practice to do that. Because we've all heard, there's different ways of saying things, and it can be taken in many different contexts, like he went to the mall, or he went to the mall, or he went to the mall. All of those have different meanings, right? Like, we're just saying he went to the mall. We're pointing out he went to the mall. What do we think about him? Who's he? Or, when we emphasize the mall, like, we're really like, he went to the mall. Like, you can say things in different ways, and the words that you actually emphasize, the speed that you say it, the pauses you take, all give a different message. One of the things I struggle with the most is word vomit. I get excited and I just go, 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 go. And I'm constantly thinking in my head what the next thing to say is. I don't want to forget. I don't want to forget. I don't want to forget. And I've been this way my entire life. After my accident, I had some slowdowns. And so it became like really prevalent after that, because I'm always afraid I'm going to forget something that's important. And I have to just constantly remind myself, pause, 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 to let the other person speak. Because sometimes we work through our scripts so fast that we don't even pause and let anybody speak. So I think the pauses are very, very important as well. And then just really making sure that you are doing things consciously. How do I say that? Like, you're practicing enough that it becomes a subconscious response to how you respond to them. Audra, what's your take on scripting and role playing?
I have had an interesting relationship with scripting and role playing, because when I was brand new, I absolutely hated it. I thought it was dumb, and I was as equally embarrassed practicing. For some reason, I felt really awkward with practicing that with another agent. And so it was either I was going to be embarrassed there, or I was going to be embarrassed on the phone, but at least on the phone, that person doesn't know me. And so I had kind of an opposite reaction with it than Matt. But then I also was like, well, then I don't sound like me. That's what everybody's excuse is, or reason is, as to why we don't use scripts and practice scripts. But then when I was in this class that some guy was teaching, and he made us do all these scripts. It might have been Matt coming down to make us do all these scripts in this class. I mean, I had to do it, but I realized that the more that I did it, and first it was just me in my room by myself. Like, I didn't even want my husband to hear me practicing these scripts, because I just felt so awkward. But the more I did it, the more it just naturally became myself. Like, everything that I was so worried about, like not sounding like me, well, someone on the other side is just going to know that I'm reading off of a page. The more that I did it, the less it sounded canned, I guess might be the right word. And it just kind of naturally became part of what I said, and it sounded like me. And so then I was like, dang it, that guy was right. Matt wasn't my favorite at first, because he made me get uncomfortable and try all these things. But then the more that I did it, I was like, well, this guy's he's right. And so now, even with, take all the NAR stuff, for example, and different conversations that we needed to have with our buyers and with our sellers, I got the scripts, I practiced them, whether it was having an agent call me to pretend to be someone, or we were in person, or just getting a group together and saying, okay, whenever someone says this, here's our response, and just saying it out. And the more times I did it, the more now it's just an automatic thing. And gosh, it makes it so much easier, because I would do the same thing Michelle would do. Always think about, shoot, what should I be saying? If you practice your scripts, it's like muscle memory, right? I bet you can drive to the grocery store or school or somewhere and not really have to think about it, because it's just, you do it all the time. It's the same way with scripts. Same way.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you guys don't know what to say, the book Exactly What to Say for Real Estate Agents is a phenomenal book. That book has all kinds of scripts with all kinds of magic words, and it helps you really reframe things. The goal here, I'm going to use Audra's phrase here, is the goal is to be their friend, essentially. I think, you know, like you want to be more of, maybe not their friend, but like you want to be more of a friend than a salesperson to them. You want them to feel like you have some value to add. And then also, while you're doing that, having those conversations, making them feel like you care about them, you have something of value to provide, you're planting those seeds of doubt. I would I would venture to guess that most of us feel like when someone tells you how good they are at something or how much they've sold of something, that it makes you feel like they are less credible. How many of you are like a don't tell me, show me type of person? Like you can tell, yeah, you can tell me all the time how many deals you've done, how many whatever you've done. It makes sense, right? If you're a speaker doing a presentation and you're trying to establish that authority, but when you're on the phone and you're calling a for sale by owner and you're trying to convince them that you've listed 100 homes, they may not even care. It's not about you, it's about them. And so it's making your scripts about them and not about you. Getting curious, asking the questions, getting to know them, getting to understand their pain points, and then dripping in those, planting those seeds of doubt. So this book, Exactly What to Say for Real Estate Agents, just has ways of phrasing things like, I'm not sure if it's for you, is all of a sudden going to pique their interest and make them listen after that because they want to know what you're going to say, because maybe it really is for them. You're not going to tell me it's not for me. Or, you know, when you ask questions like, what is your experience? So if you have a for sale by owner and you're going through saying, well, what is your experience with selling a high value item? What is your experience with closing a real estate property? What is your experience with marketing a home? You know, just asking those questions where all of a sudden they're going to start saying, well, I don't have experience. Oh, wait, maybe I don't have experience. You're planting those seeds of doubt. However, you're not making them feel like they don't feel like you're making them feel stupid. They're just asking those questions and coming to those conclusions themselves. So the goal is really to get them to come to the conclusion that they need your assistance, if that's something they need. I mean, and if it's not, and this isn't working, then that's when you move on to the next person. But what was interesting too about this podcast was they were having a conversation, and they were kind of scripting through a call and talking about how you get through that, like, hey, this is so and so, you know, we're calling about the house on da 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 da, and then they get that rejection, like, take me off your list. And how many of you guys, when someone says take me off your list, you're like, oh, I'm sorry, thanks for, you know, taking my call, whatever. You just essentially move on from there, right? And you hang up the phone. How many of you guys do that? And how many of you guys continue the conversation after they say take me off your list? This was the best line that I heard, and I thought, this is genius. Instead of just saying, hey, I'll take you off my list, or whatever you say, you know, hey, yep, I know I don't like to get phone calls from people either. I will take you off my list. However, while I have you on the phone, can I ask you, your home is in a beautiful location. Why do you think it hasn't sold yet? So moving into that conversation, acknowledging I'm going to take you off the list, but then moving on to, well, I have you on the phone. Let me ask you. And they may hang up on you, curse you out, whatever, but you may actually engage in a conversation with them. So I thought that was genius. I'm definitely one that when someone says, take me off a list, I'm like, okay, they're offended. They don't want me to call them. I'm just going to hang up. End of, you know, conversation. And I would say probably, I don't know, Ramil probably has the numbers because he makes a lot of calls, but I would say probably a good third of people tell me to take them off the list, and I never call them again, and I never continue the conversation or even try. But what if, you know, a percentage of those actually, once you got into that conversation, decided they did want to work with you, decided they did want to have future conversations with you. Ramil, how many calls do you make every week or day?
It honestly depends, but in average, I mean, I probably make somewhere around 100 a day, I would say. So yeah, 500 a week, I would say, give or take.
And when you first started making calls, did you feel well scripted, polished, like it just came to you as
Oh
natural?
no. Oh no, it was yeah, so when I first started, I got thrown into a team where the guy he made his business on cold calling, and so that's what we had to do. Um and yeah, it would take, I mean, I'd put myself up for 15, 20 minutes just to make the first call. And a lot of times I didn't even answer. So that was hard to get through. And then yeah, it's something that again you just do, and it sounds repetitive, but again, it's just something that you do that you get more comfortable with. You keep calling, and it gets easier to call, easier to pick up the phone. Um, and I'm someone who doesn't even like talking on the phone. Like in my personal life, like I want everybody to text me. Um, but yeah, calling just, becomes that easier. And then the scripts, for me, scripting there's really levels to it. And I found like, you know, knowing what to say is one thing, and I think you hit the nail on the head, with the podcast. It's a lot of it is how you say it. So you get to the point where you're like, okay, I know exactly what to say. I have, these objection handlers. I know where I can move the conversation, but still, if you have those things, but you don't know how to say it, um, then to me, it's almost pointless at that point too, right? Because, um, if you listen to someone like Matt talk, and like in our coaching sessions, like a lot of the times if we go over scripting, I go back on the recordings and I listen to how he says it, right? Not exactly what he's saying, but how he's saying it. And then I just, try to mimic that. Um, because for me, the biggest thing is I know what to say, but I don't know exactly, where is there supposed to be a pause, right? Where is that tonality supposed to come in? And those things literally move conversations. Like I'm sure everybody in here has heard, Matt talk, and when he gets on a roll and he's explaining stuff, right? Like it moves you literally, like you have feelings about what he's saying. And so that's the point of, when you want to get in these conversations with people, you want to have um, you know, the right tonality and everything, like you were saying. So when I practice, and I kind of went away from scripting with other agents because one, a lot of the times when you do other agents, they I don't know, they give you layups, I think, a lot, right? So they take it easy when you're scripting. And so it's like eventually, like they might start off with some hard like objections a little bit, but then they always move into like basically just giving it to you, right? So it ends up in a good scenario. One of the best things that I like to do, and Audra kind of talked about it, how she was scared to do it in front of her husband. If I am ever trying a new script, I will try it on my wife, because for whatever reason, like that the personal connection with her, whatever she thinks about it, it's like a new person, right? She doesn't know what I'm doing. She doesn't know, what my script is, what, really my objective is. And so I get a real honest, response from her. And I can tell, am I doing a good job? Am I doing a bad job? Is there things that, I should have mentioned that I forgot to mention? And I get nervous, kind of like Audra said, talking to people like that. So that's really what I've tried to move to. Um, or if I do try to script with an agent, I tell them like don't hold back. Just make it like as hard as you possibly can. Like think of every possible objection or reaction, natural reaction that you can have. Like don't come at this as an agent, trying just to get through this process.
Yeah, I was on a team and we had daily calls Monday through Thursday, and we had to do scripting and role playing. And there was a group of us that were virtual and then a group of us that were live. And the live folks would just run through their script real quick and then not really give objections, just kind of have like, or maybe give a soft objection. But the three of us that were on Zoom were always like really throwing the hard curveballs at each other. I think we had the trust in each other that we knew that none of us were judging. We were all there to really help each other grow. But B, we also were experienced enough agents that we understood that the reality is you don't get easy objections very often, right? You're going to have to do, and it's rare that someone just raises their hand and like, yep, sign me up. You're going to have to break through some walls and some barriers. So I think you're right. It's finding the right scripting and role-playing partners that can really give you valuable feedback that can throw out a lot of objections and be the difficult client, because you don't need to really script and role play around the easy client. You need to script and role play around the difficult client. And it's not even those opening scripting, messages that you're needing to practice as much as it is the objection handlers, because that's where most of us lose the call. We get an objection, we don't know what to say or how to say it, and then it all goes downhill from there. So I think that's a good point. So do you ever record yourself or do anything to like watch back and see how you're doing and change it? Or is it all just in communication with, like you talked about, scripting with your wife and whoever, and just getting feedback from that perspective?
Yeah, I've recorded myself, just to kind of hear, those basic conversations. I don't record every conversation because that just takes up a lot of space. But there's also, I won't call them milestones, but objectives that I've noticed that I can hit now, right? So when I first started calling, phone calls would be anywhere from, I'd probably say like 1 to 2 minutes. If it was a good phone call, it'd be like a 2-minute phone call, right? Now doing this, I mean, my average phone talk time, if it's a decent conversation, I mean, I'm on the phone for 10 minutes at least, right? And so that tells me that I'm able to, I'm having these conversations with people. I'm getting more, I'm asking the right questions and keeping them on the phone, basically, is what's that saying to me. And then what information I can get within that time. So even though I'm not recording and listening to what I'm saying, my time limits that I'm having on the phone is telling me, okay, I'm in the right direction. I'm having good conversations with people, getting good notes with them. And yeah, that's really all I look for. But the few recordings that I do listen to, like I said, would either be like scripting calls with Matt, during coaching sessions and things like that, that I really try to work on. Because for me, the tonality and everything of those, the pauses, that's really, I feel like, is the biggest piece that I'm missing.
Yeah. When I think the
Well,
important,
Ramil just recorded his last listing presentation and it was live. And so we had the opportunity to go in there and I got to literally, it was as if I was sitting next to him, and then we were able to take notes and then dissect and then deconstruct his listing presentation live.
Mhm.
And then we're able to come in with some ideas on best practices moving forward with that. So
Yeah.
as well.
And that helps a lot. I mean, really, if you don't record all of them, I challenge all you guys to record at least a couple, because like
It's
I
super
recorded it.
comfortable, right? You loved it.
It's the most comfortable thing I've ever done in my life. But yeah, you listen to it and like Matt would ask me questions, and like my answer to the questions were completely wrong, because like when you're on the phone, like you think you're doing something, you think, even when you get off the phone, replay it one way. And then when you actually listen to it back or have someone else listen to it, it's the opposite, right? I think one of the questions Matt asked was like, he was like, so percentage wise, like talking, like where do you think you were percentage wise? And so thinking back on, I was like, like I think, we were pretty even talking wise. Like I talked a little bit, she talked a little bit, but I think she talked a little bit more than I did. And Matt was like, that was the opposite. Like I talked so much more than like she talked. And, in my mind, if I wouldn't have done that, I thought I did, an awesome job, right? Talking ratio, everything was good. But yeah, so I mean, record something. One of you guys' conversations you have with people, just so you can get a real look at how you're doing, and send it to somebody if you're brave enough, and let them critique you.
yeah, I think you got to have a little bit of humility when you go into watching those recordings, but it's the same thing as if same kind of concept as when you're talking to people. You just have to go into it with curiosity and look at it not with judgment, but with curiosity of what did I do? How did I do it? What could I have done better? Versus judging yourself and being critical of yourself from that perspective. There was one more thing they said that I think is important to kind of end on here too. And I know Ramil talked about a lot of videos you can watch of people. And I think that's really good, right? You need to have the role models, you need to get the information, but talking about the thing, thinking about the thing, vision boarding about the thing, that's not doing the thing. Doing the thing is the thing, right? So you have to actually do it. You have to actually get in front of people, have those real live conversations on the phone with clients, and practice. Because it's really, You get rewarded in public for what you've spent months and years doing behind the scenes. So if you want to be like Matt's and smooth and savvy in your conversations, you've got to put that time in and actually do the thing. You can't just watch your way to it. Just listen to him and you're going to be just like him. You have to actually do it. All right. Anybody else have any other thoughts?
I'd say too, with the objection handlers, we've done this a few times in group coaching, but make a game out of it. So find the hard ones, not just the easy ones, but find the hard ones, cut them up and give them to everyone, and they all have to ask and have them test you, but then turn them around, make everybody go. Then everybody has to do it, so not one person feels awkward or uncomfortable. But if you make a game out of literally just about anything, for some reason, it always makes it more fun. Even though you're still doing the thing you didn't want to do, now it's a game. So just get with a few agents and all of you take a few of them and pass them around to each other and have that conversation with the hard objection handlers, not the easy ones, but with the hard ones. Just gamify it.
Yeah.
Well, we do that too with a game, like gamifying it, and then nobody can use the same objection handler twice.
Hmm.
And the whole thing is like, we try to get to like 10 different objection handlers for the same objection. And so if we do it as a team, then we all get to go like out Starbucks or do something. So that's something that we used to do in coaching.
I love that.
Nice.
Awesome. All right. Well, we are at time. So go practice your scripts and make your calls. It's a perfect time of day to do that. We'll leave you with that, and we will see you guys on Friday.